Welcome to the Moffitt Method podcast, where longtime strength and conditioning coach Tommy Moffitt explores everything from the art of coaching, improving performance, sports nutrition, and mental training. Now, welcome your host, Coach Tommy Moffitt.
Welcome to the Moffitt Method podcast, and I'm your host, Tommy Moffitt. If you're listening for the first time, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. The purpose of the podcast is both educational and an opportunity for me to introduce and highlight some of the great coaches, administrators, and friends that I have come to know and respect during my coaching career. I think the listeners will enjoy a variety of the guests and the topics that are discussed, and hopefully come away with a few knowledge bombs that propel your teams to greatness. Our extraordinary guest today is Coach Brian Johnson, head athletic performance coach for the University of California, Berkeley Golden Bears football team. Coach Johnson is in his second season as the Golden Bears head football athletic performance coach after spending the previous 11 years on strength and conditioning staffs at FBS schools and in the NFL. In his most recent position before joining the Golden Bears in 2021, Coach Johnson spent 3 seasons as the director of strength and conditioning at Arizona, where he was heavily into the field of sports science while also working as a liaison between the football program and the university's Center for Innovation in Brain Science. Coach Johnson started his strength and conditioning career as an assistant strength coach at Florida State University for 2 years before being hired as the head strength and conditioning coach at Akron at the age of 27. He spent the all season prior to 2012 campaign at Akron before his alma mater, LSU, came calling. For the next 3 seasons, he was an assistant strength and conditioning coordinator with the Tigers and then held similar roles with the San Francisco 49ers and Texas A&M before moving on to Arizona. Coach Johnson is a native of Tallahassee, Florida, and Godby High School. While at LSU, Coach Johnson played in 44 games, playing both right and left guard, and anchored the line at right guard in his junior and senior seasons. Coach was a second-team All-SEC pick, finished his senior season, listen to this, with 70 knockdowns and 20 pancakes, and a team and season high of 12 knockdowns in the 49-0 win over Kentucky, and a team high 11 in the 28-14 against the Alabama Crimson Tide. His junior year now, check this out, he totaled 78 knockdowns. Brian met and married his wife, Angela, also a strength coach at LSU at the time, and has a son, Deacon, and a daughter named Chandler. Welcome to the podcast, Coach B. What's up?
What's going on, man? Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, I'm so jacked up about this. So yesterday when I was working on the script and all, I went back to YouTube and I pulled up the 2006 season. I watched every game. I got so crunked in here, boy. That team was loaded, man. Yeah. I mean, loaded. Finished 11-2, had a huge win, 41-14 against Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. But except for a few guys, starting quarterback and some DBs and all, it was the same team that won the championship the next year, So it was loaded, So I had, we lost 2 games. We lost to Auburn on the road. That you talking about, I got mad. I'd forgotten about how the game went, but I got mad all over again when I saw, we lost to those suckers 7-3 at Auburn. But then we went to Florida. We got our butts kicked against Florida, man.
Yeah,
23-10. But I tell you what, you played your tail off, man. I was watching you come off the ball. We on the goal line one time, you came off the ball and drove the linebacker back like 5 yards. But it was great, man. I tell you, I miss a lot about coaching, but I don't miss that ride from Ocala to Gainesville.
Oh,
that was a terrible bus ride, man.
Yeah, it was the worst. And I'm used to that ride because that's my parents are from Ocala, so I was used to that ride. It's nothing. Yeah. I mean, just horse pasture. That's it.
Yeah, and then that swamp. There's a swamp about midway between Ocala, because, and for the people that don't understand, there's not a place in Gainesville to stay, or there wasn't the whole time I coached LSU. So we stayed in Ocala. And then about at the halfway mark, you go through this swamp and there's nothing but some kind of like sawgrass or swamp grass, and you're in the middle of nowhere, man. And it's a tough ride. And then all of a sudden you pop up in Gainesville and there's the stadium. But yeah, I did some reminiscing yesterday. It was cool.
No doubt. Those some good times.
I watched some of those pancakes and knockdowns. Hey, you know what I was going to say? You woke up against Alabama. You were pissed off when we played Alabama. You must have put a rock in your shoe that morning, because
I remember Coach Sarah, man, that was a big week, because the guy that I was going up against was one of Jamarcus' homeboys too. So there was a little bit of talking going on that week.
Yeah. You woke up pissed off and you either slammed your hand in the bathroom door or put a rock in your shoe because you were kicked off against Alabama. All right, man. Well, look, let's get with the show here. And, my first question so far for every guest, and at some point people are going to get tired of listening to it, but I think it's critical that everybody understands that, every person's journey and motivation is different. There are some similarities in a lot of the guests, but there's not been one cookie cutter path to success in strength and conditioning. Yeah. So my question, was there a defining moment that influenced you to become a strength coach? Was it something, did you wake up one morning and tell everyone, hey, I'm going to be a strength coach? Or was it something that took place gradually over time?
Yeah, I think it was something that took place gradually over time, man. I could probably point to about 4 or 5 different things that happened from the moment I got to LSU as a player to finishing up with the Ravens in my 3rd year in the NFL, that I just knew that when I was done playing, I just wanted to be in the weight room. And a lot of that had to do with you and your staff. And the things that I was able to overcome from my freshman year to my senior year, and the growth that I had was pivotal, not just me as an athlete, but just in the person that I am today as a father and a husband. And I wanted to be that for somebody else. I wanted to be what you were and what, Travell and Bo D and Vic and Cochran and Dillman and all those guys were for us as players in that weight room. So, I remember my first time running 110s and getting there, and everybody was talking about 110s, and I had no idea what a 110 was. I'm like, what are you talking? What is a 110? And I found out very quickly what a 110 was. So it's just a culmination of all those moments that just added up to say, like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be a part of. And I wanted to see the transitions in young men, like my transition, from someone who had no idea what it took to be a college athlete, had no idea what it felt like to push yourself past being comfortable and continuing to challenge yourself and want more for yourself, and then being around people that wanted more from you when it wouldn't benefit them at all. I wanted to be that. So that's what led me into this profession.
That is awesome. Awesome. So one of the things that I've heard from a lot of people, there was always a person, one of the similarities, there's always a person, but then there's also the growth that takes place, in a person, and whether it was physical growth or mental or emotional or social, how to interact with people. It's always, that's the one common thread that you hear from person to person.
Yeah.
So you've coached a long time, and have a lot of solid experience at every level in sports. Are there some things that you feel every athlete should do in strength and conditioning, regardless of the level of experience they have or the sport that they play in athletics?
Man, the biggest thing is just investing in themselves. And it is that doesn't always mean, financially or monetarily. Like there
Yeah.
are things that you can do, and the people that usually can help you with that are the people that are running your weight room. And not just about how much weight to put on the bar or upper body, lower body lift on what day, what time, what should I be doing at what time of year, but just, the parts that when you're not necessarily under the barbell,
Yeah.
Recovery, nutrition, make hydration, what to eat, when to eat, all those things are so important. And I think, if there was one thing I had to look back as an athlete, it would be investing a little bit more into my body, sleeping. Man, I'm 38 now, and I don't think I really truly understood the benefits of sleeping until recently, and seeing the difference in how I feel. As we age, it's not as easy to just get up and pop up and go do
Yeah.
things like it was back in the day. So, that's one thing I would say all athletes is get with your performance specialist and learn about what you should be doing, in the weight room, but even outside of the weight room, and invest in the time and all the resources that you have around you to make sure that your body's ready to go on a daily basis. And it's like a 9 to 5. It's not something you can just,
Right.
take an hour out of your day and do. It's a full-time job.
Yeah. And, when you were at LSU, the NC2A still had some really, really strict rules on feeding. And you guys, for the most part, except for that one meal that, you knew that you were going to get every day, you guys were on your own a lot of times. Yeah. And, we fought back then to give y'all snack bars, just a treat. We always had the shakes and Powerade and stuff like that, but there really wasn't the extra food that you needed. So you guys, I'm sure y'all were going Canes and
Jack in the Box. Sheesh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Coach Nader. So Coach Nader is known worldwide, but
right.
For some of the listeners, they may have not been introduced to Coach Sam Nader, but he was our director of football ops. And and I don't think we had Jamie Meeks had not started while you were there. So
no.
Coach Nader was the nutritionist.
Yeah.
And so whatever meal, it didn't matter if it was a bowl game or after a game, the snacks were Cane's, Popeyes, and Domino's Pizza, man. And I would, say, Coach, we can't keep doing this. And he'd say, well, Tommy, the boys like it. So, that there's been a big, change throughout athletics in that regard.
Oh, yeah.
So let me ask you this. So I had two questions I was going to ask, and you answered one about, what looking back on your career and so I don't want this to sound like you were not an accomplished football player because, you played in 44 games, started 28 games in the SEC at a high level when LSU was lights out, my man. And when, football was different then too. I was watching those highlights yesterday, and I mean, they're spearing guys in the chest. That's when real men played the game. And you could talk about the 60s and 70s, but
no doubt,
man, in the early 2000s, there was some fast men out there. Yeah. And I saw Buster Davis get hit on the sidelines in the chin. We were playing out. I think we were playing Alabama, Florida, but Buster took a shot from the crown of the helmet right in the throat on the sideline. So you played in a league when there were some grown men out there playing, and I was going to ask you, what did you feel like you could have done better looking back? Yeah. And then you said, basically take better care of yourself outside the arena. So my next question on that was, is there an age, and maybe you've already started with Deacon and Chandler, but being that Angela is or was a very good string coach herself, at what age would y'all consider starting Deacon and Chandler in some form of organized physical preparation? Not, barbells and stuff, but What age?
Man, Chandler 6 and Deacon is 7, and now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you said, it's not a barbell, so I don't have to worry about loading
Yeah.
them. That's not, when you talk about training kids, load should probably be the last thing. It's all preparation for loading.
Yeah.
And when you prep for loading, you got to start with the movement.
Yeah.
So we're just putting the emphasis on movement for those two.
Yeah.
Just bending down, posture, getting in those deep ranges of motions. Me and Deacon will get up. We got like a little step down into our living room. So we do like a hands elevated push-ups.
Yeah.
Tell him to get his chest all the way down to the step. Teach him how to squat. He's like me. He kind of overpronates at the ankle a little bit. I see it. So I'm like, hey, let's see if I can try to fix this now before, he gets to college and he's 18 years old and he's just trying to fix it then.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing that you can see something in your own son at the age of 8 that you experienced throughout your process? That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I know now that, like, when I back squat and my low back and like the inside of my knees start hurting, that I'm not paying attention to a lot of my posture and things. I'm trying to fix things at 30 plus where he's 7. So just working with them on that. And now, like, when they go in the backyard and play, they're setting up cones that their mom used to train some clients at the house. Some of the kids that she trains at the house, the cones and the hurdles. And they're doing the things that they see me doing with guys out on the field and in the weight room. Yeah. So all of that is training, man. That's getting them ready. And Deacon has some 5-pound dumbbells. He does some dumbbell bench, and we squat with him, and we do step ups and all kinds of stuff. Just playing around and teaching them how to move and getting them in love with the weight room. I don't think as long as they're not going to hurt themselves, they're old enough to do it.
Yeah. Amen. And you know what? They're going to grow up just like my 3 and every other strength coach's kids. No doubt. It's a part of their life, and it's something they grew up playing with. And so it's never work.
Yep.
Good. All right. So now let's talk about Cal, man. Let's talk about what you're doing there. Can you explain to us in the big picture, your program design model for the football team there?
Yeah. So everything, now is just trying to, reverse engineering is such a cute term now. But that's what we're doing. We're just trying to reverse engineer the game to give them what they need based off what they're going to be demanded to do every day. And we have so much information now and all these books on football physics and all these, and now the game has been really broken down into energy systems. And, there's been research done on how long an average play takes, how much time in between that play, how much, rest plus or minus whatever. So, you take all those things into account, and now we know exactly what we have to prepare them for. So that's really what the program is based off. And what exactly are we preparing them for? There are obviously different positional demands. There are different, physical demands just based off the position. My wide receivers and DBs. When my wide receivers go home in the off season, all they're doing is running routes. So, you really don't have to worry about too much getting them back to a level of force production because that's all they're doing, running routes. They're accelerating, they're getting hard decels, and they're hitting some pretty good velocities, whereas my DBs, they're just doing footwork drills. They're losing a lot of that force production. You see it on the force plate, and you see it in their mile per hour when they come back from the off season. So I have to make sure that I'm exposing them to those things, and it has to be gradual. It has to be a certain process, and we're using a lot of our GPS data working backwards from, our big practices or big games or our big weeks of time. We're working backwards from there and what we're doing on the field. And then the weight room is the weight room. You got to get them strong. You got to get them powerful. You have to build the armor. So you have to pretty much go through every type of phase that you can go through in the weight room, whether it's strength, power, or hypertrophy. They need it all in there. So you just have to, see what type of what phase you are on the field and make sure that the weight room is kind of coinciding with where you are with what's going on the field. And it's not the same every year. Things change. You know, we're sitting and we're looking at what's going on in the season right now, deciding what we want to get done in the winter. And it's either a lot of stuff on the field or we need a lot in the weight room. So just looking at your team, looking at who you have, who you're losing, who's coming in, to decide exactly, you know, the next step forward.
Yeah. So here's a question that I thought of while you were talking, and it's amazing. I didn't even think about this prior to it, but you know, you played offensive line at a very high level. And now that you're on the other side of the fence, do you look at that position particularly different than you do some of the other positions? Because you're like me, you're an O-line guy, and those are my boys.
You know it.
Yeah.
You know it. You know it. And I even tell recruits, I admit to them, you know, the offensive linemen, even the defensive linemen that come in, I'm like, y'all have a special place in my heart.
Yeah.
I probably expect a lot more from you than I will a lot of other the positions. You know, but then I'm also just trying to always find different ways to give linemen what they need, because it's such a hard position to really prepare for. You know what I mean? You can't train them to push on somebody. I mean, you can, but I can't simulate them pushing on somebody for 4 quarters. You know what I mean? A football that is equal to a greater force than they can produce. It's hard to do that. So you have to be very creative. You got to be very creative. I mean, I could tell a wide receiver to run the route tree for conditioning. Or a DB to backpedal, or linebackers to run the hoop, or, you know, whatever. But, you know, we can't use sleds and push on each other in training. So we got to get real creative. So I am always looking for different ways to try to get those guys stimulated. Yeah.
Now, did you play for George Arno? Was Coach Arno here?
Yeah, my freshman year. He's the O-line coach that recruited me.
Yeah. So he used to always say that playing offensive line was different than every position in football, because it's the only position that plays with their back toward the football.
Yep.
You know, everybody else plays facing it, but the O-line is always a tougher position. And, you know me, how much I love the O-line, man.
Oh, yeah.
I would just stand at practice, you know, and just watch y'all's feet all the time. And that I was always intrigued by your, you know, from the ground up, looking at the feet and where their toes are pointed and how they moved, and then the knees and then the hips. And if you can get your feet, your knees, and your hips aligned, then you've got it, you got it pretty good.
No doubt.
For an offense. And so, I knew that you would look at that position a little differently. Now, let me ask you this. What effect has the new rules had where the coaches can be more involved in the off season for tactical preparation? Has that, I saw that look on your face. How has that affected your physical preparation now that so much emphasis has been placed on the tactical preparation in the off season? Has that, how's that dynamic worked?
Honestly, it isn't as bad as I originally thought that it was going to be. It's just depending on where it's placed.
Yeah.
I always ask, like, our head coaches is, I want them to get to a period where they're in a specific phase before they actually get to the competitive phase of what they're doing. So I like it. I always love the transition of being with the coaches during some training time. You know, like I said, we're tracking it, so we're manipulating how much time they have with the coaches. We even get to give somewhat of an emphasis of what we want them to do in that time. So it's just a smooth transition going from a little less uncontrolled and chaotic when it's our time with them and we're telling the coaches what to do, and then transitioning into practice where we have absolutely no say so. And you know how it is, man. As soon as the players get with the coaches, it's just a different mindset. It's a different mentality. It's a different pace. So it's usually like your highest day, just because it's the first day with them and everybody's geeked up. So I actually like the transition because I don't get that on that first day. I kind of get it in training where I can manipulate some of the things that we're going to see are going to happen on that day. So I don't necessarily mind it. Now, I know there are some situations where from day one, you're hopping in with the coach and they're just going indie and they're just blasting and you don't get to work on the things that you need to work on. And usually you miss out on output, the speed work and training them to be fast outdoors. So if I was in that situation, it would be a headache. But I actually have a really good head coach and coaching staff that allows me to basically just build it into training as we transition into the phase where I get to hand them off.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way, based on, because it just started, at LSU toward the end of my career. And so now it's much more prominent and much more organized. But there are still schools where they're like, man, we don't know what day of the week we're going on. Sometimes we're out there for 30 minutes. Sometimes we're out there for 2 hours. You just never know.
And that's the hard part. That's when it gets tough. And then, they start asking about the injury report. And then you got to explain, day one, you can't do an hour and a half of Indy, coach.
Yeah. Well, now, so let me ask you this. Are there any days, because I know everybody does it a little differently, are there any days where your staff and the football staff work in conjunction with one another? For instance, so at LSU, the players warmed up on their own. We did not have any input. The players would warm up because that counted against the clock if the coaches were there for the warm up. So the players warmed up on their own and then they started their practice. Whereas there are other programs where the strength staff goes out there, warms them up, does all their dynamic mobility and, some speed improvement drills. And then they'll actually sprint a little bit or depending on what day of the week it is, they'll warm them up and then they go practice and then they'll do some conditioning at the end. Are y'all able to do any of that, or is it more separated strength and tactical?
No, we actually we do a lot of that in the off season and in the in season. Yeah. In the off season, like I said, we build in some of the time with the coaches based off our training day.
Awesome.
So if we have, a day where we want to see a bunch of acceleration and some change direction work, we do a bunch of like general prep and like our warm up. We'll get like a 25, 30-minute warm up or prep, and then another 30-minute, 40-minute indie or whatever session with their coaches.
Beautiful.
In season, it's very interesting how we do it. Now we have a positional warm up. So all the coaches are just doing very kind of low level, short space, positional stuff at their section. And then the whistle blows and then they come in and they do our warm up. And then boom, they're in the indie session. And that's every day in season.
Yeah.
We're just kind of working off each other. And in the off season, we build their time around our training.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that is by far the most effective way of doing it versus
for sure
having two separate calendars, two separate schedules, and no one. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So what's a normal day? Let's take the off season, for instance. What's a normal day look like for you guys in the weight room or out on the field, depending on what's going on?
Okay. So I'll talk about the summer because I really like the way we handle summers out here. And it all kind of stemmed off of COVID, and they kind of relaxed some rules with how you could, handle training and time with coaches and building that in. So I kind of wanted to build it a little bit off of an NFL model. You come in and get it done, and then you're going. So in the morning at 7 a.m., we have what we call a breakfast assessment, where we get our force plate jumps, we get our NOR board in, and then they get breakfast. And then they have to fill out their questionnaire on the iPads that are attached to our racks. So it's just a questionnaire, simple questions. How'd you sleep? What's your mood? How long did you sleep? What's the quality of the sleep? nutrition, hydration, how many bottles of water did you drink, all that other good stuff. They get a counter movement jump or a 10-5 where it's just those reactive pogo type jumps. And then we'll get a Nord board. We'll either hit a full Nordic or we'll get the ISO 60 or ISO at 30 degrees. Just depending on the day. And then our skill will come out and run while the bigs are getting their breakfast assessment and get to chill out in the locker room. Our skill and big skill will be outside. They'll run. And once they're done running, our bigs come. When our bigs are running, our skill and mid-skill guys will either go to another field and do some indie or a player run practice or go watch some film. There'll be some type of snack, like, hydrate, eat a snack, recover a little bit while the bigs are running. Once the bigs get done, they go hit their, get another meeting, get a recovery session. They could get some indie time, go hit the sled on their own. Sometimes we mix in some of that coach's time within that. While they're doing that and recovering from that run, our skill and bigs are in the weight room. They start their lift. Once they're done lifting, end it with a big meal up in the cafeteria. While they're eating, the bigs come and they get their lift in, and then the day's over with by like 12:30. So, we feed them in the morning. We get an assessment done. They get their meeting time. They get their kind of captain. We call it captain time, where the players are leading things in the building. They lift. They eat again. And then here, internships are really huge because the internships of these guys, they're leaving and graduating and going and working at these places. So it's a very serious deal. And instead of me having them in the building, having to come run and lift, leave, go to an internship, and then come back and get all their meeting and indie time, we just get it done in one block. And food just surrounds it. And then they're by 12:30, they're gone. By 2:00, me and my staff are gone. So we're not burnt out going into the season, because with these new recruiting rules, we just don't get a lot of time off. So it shortens our day. It shortens their day. We get a lot of work in. There's good recovery in between the run and the lift. So we get very good quality lifts in. And that's the day. So that's how we do it, like in the summer. Now, obviously, like in the spring where they have bigger class loads, we can't do it like that. And it's a little more traditional where they come in, they run, they lift, and then they're out. But our summers, we get really creative in the summer. I love the way we handle our summers.
You touched on that May recruiting. So when, Joe Danos, so Brian worked with Joe at at LSU, Florida State, and then Joe went and coached in the NFL for a long time with the Giants, and then he worked in professional soccer for the Miami Soccer Club or Football Club, whatever they called it. So Joe, when he transitioned to the University of Florida, he asked me, is there anything I need to prepare for? I said, the month of May.
Oh, man.
He said, what's wrong with the month of May? The players are gone. And I said, dude, you have no idea. I said, they've changed. It's not like it used to be when you were at FSU, man. And so the month of May and June was like maddening. Yep. And you have, for the listeners, if you're not involved or have been around it, man, every day you have camps, you have recruits right in the middle of a workout. You could have 100 guys in there training, and they're going to walk in 3 guys that may or may not even play college football, but they're on campus. And if they're on campus, they're getting a full tour of the facilities.
Yep.
And it was maddening.
It is. And the transfer portal doesn't make it any better, because a guy hops in the portal and then you're getting a call the week of or a couple of days before saying, hey, we got a guy coming in on an official visit. Yeah. We need you this weekend.
Yeah. And you could have something planned. You and Angela headed to Napa Valley or something.
No doubt.
Yeah. So there's 2 questions I want to ask you. One is, the weather's got to be nice and more conducive to training out there than what it was. I mean, it would be, hey,
No
I can close my eyes. I can see you out there sweating your butt off, man.
Oh man, I don't sweat. I don't sweat out here.
Yeah.
It's no humidity in the summer, in the mornings, 55, 60 degrees.
Yeah.
And then the sun comes out. And I mean, it's just, you're sitting there saying, man, the day's perfect. And you end up saying it about 50 times a year.
Yeah.
You know, when you actually are just out there and you notice it. The sun's out and it's a breeze. You can't beat this weather because you can just train in it every day. Yesterday was the first time I think it rained. I can't even tell you the last time it rained, Coach.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I can't even tell you.
Yeah, and it rains here every day.
In the summer in Louisiana, it'll rain 4 or 5 times a week. Now, it might not be a big, long rain, but you'll get a little rain or a little storm just here and there, and then all of a sudden you think, oh, man, they're going to cancel practice, so we can't run 110s outside, and it stops right before you. You watch that steam come up off the ground.
Yeah, that big red burning ball of fire comes out. You know, that was one of the things when Jake Flint got the job at LSU. We talked, and I told him, I said that the heat is real.
Oh, yeah.
And because you have to play in it, you want to be out there, but there's a long-lasting effect that carries over into the season if you're not careful. And it's real. And then the other thing I told him is you got to have an alternate plan for rain.
Yeah, you got to.
Because it's going to rain every day.
Yeah.
All right. So what are some things that you do in the running program? And you've touched on some of it, but what do you do to prepare the team for competition? Is there a lot of specificity for the different positions, or is it more basic fundamental energy system development by position, or how do you break down the running program?
Yeah. So early on in a phase where it's winter, and in winter it is more kind of, energy system training. Football is alactic, but it gets anaerobic. It gets aerobic just because of the length of the game or the length of a practice, right? And practices and games sometimes aren't, find it not much different in time.
Right, yeah.
And really practice, when you look at density of a practice in a game, practice is always way more dense, just like our training is way more dense than a practice because we only have an hour compared to the 2.5 hours that a coach can get to prepare for game week. So that's basically in the winter, we're just doing, trying to get them in the best shape as possible. And then once again, just trying to drive output, just trying to get them as fast as they possibly can. We don't have to rush it. We want to give them full rest and recovery in between those reps. But then, once we're getting close to competition, when we're actually getting to that specific period, it's all about work capacity. And then we're trying to get work capacity in those specific demands for each position. And we just, like I said, we kind of reverse engineer. We're breaking down, what we're looking at every day in our GPS reports to decide prescription. Once we get into that. So, decelerations, accelerations, they come in different bands. So there's a 1, 2, and 3 band for acceleration, decelerations. Obviously, starting out early on, we're going to get most of our work in those 1 and 2 bands, and then we want to start exposing them to the biggest band, that third band of acceleration, deceleration, which is going to impose the biggest amount of stress. That's our way of managing it. Is we actually get to prescribe it, and it's progressive overload. Yeah, cells, decels, progressively overloading. Exposure to velocities or certain intensities, and then making sure that we expose them to enough volume at those intensities. And we know what type of volume we need to expose them to because we know what the biggest practice day is going to look like. We know what the biggest practice week is going to look like. We call it worst case scenario. Yeah. And so we just build it from there. And week 1, we probably want 50% of all of those things that we're looking at. Then we get to week 6 or 7, we want to start exposing them what we're calling worst case scenario, which is 100% of that week. For example, like training camp, we do a 4 days on, 1 day off, 4 days on, 1 day off, and then we go into a 6-day practice week. So our worst case scenario is that first 6-day practice week. So whatever our receivers and DBs and everybody's getting from an acceleration, deceleration standpoint, we're exposing them to that in training in that worst case scenario week, where we only have 5 days to get it. The coaches have 6 days to get it, and we have a lot less time from a daily standpoint to get it done. But we have to expose them to that because there's no difference in under training and overtraining. So you're going to get the same results. They're not going to be prepared, and they're going to be susceptible to getting injured. So we try to pinpoint exactly what's the biggest thing that they're going to get exposed to. So then when they get there, they're ready for it. They've seen it. We've built not only just a physical resiliency to it, but also a mental resiliency. They know, look, I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be beat up. This is the week that we've trained for. So let's go get it. So that's just kind of how we kind of build out our off season and what we're getting ready for. And we know exactly, these days, exactly what we're getting ready for.
Do you have interns, like either undergraduate or postgraduate interns that help you during the summer?
Yeah, so we get interns. We get like sports science interns, and then we get undergraduate, postgraduate, whoever we can get in to come and help us out with all this stuff. Yep.
Yeah, because there's a lot of moving parts, and that's the reason I ask is there's a lot of moving parts, man, and it's tough. Now, is your sports scientist, is he a member of your 5 strength coaches?
Yes, he is a member of the 5. My sports scientist, he's over sports science and he's also over reconditioning. So getting injured players back onto the field.
And it helps to have someone because he's very bright. He's, he's been through the ringer, but with him responsible for all of this technology and all of the information that he's trying to pull from the devices, and then he's coaching also, you've got to have extra help. And a lot of people don't understand how understaffed you can get real quick. And especially if a guy calls in sick, or if a guy's wife is sick, or if a car breaks down, because I'm sure you got guys that live all over the place out there. And
it's tough. It takes a lot. I mean, even going back to that day, that assessment day, you got to have somebody at the force plates, you got to have somebody at the NORA board, and we have multiple sets of all of those. And then you got to have people setting up what's going on the field.
Yeah,
you got to have somebody in the cafeteria making sure people are coming to the cafeteria.
Yeah.
And then, I'm ripping and running to all of these places. You got to have somebody weighing the guys in every day.
Yeah.
And I got to go out and make sure that the field's set up the way that I want it to be set up, that everything is moving smooth. I got to make sure everybody's already in the door. Because, you'll have guys that like to sleep in and miss a day. I got to make sure everybody's here. So you got to have people that you trust in all these different places. And everybody's doing something different, but they're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So it requires more than just 5 people.
Yeah.
You got to have help, especially when you got, 60 guys in one group.
Yeah. I'm going to digress just for a second. It's the craziest rule in all of collegiate athletics that you can only have 5 full-time strength coaches for football. You could have, if you have 15 basketball players, you could have 15 strength coaches. If you have 30 baseball players, you could have 30 strength coaches. But in the biggest sport that pays all the bills for the most part, you can only have 5. And it's impossible to do the job adequately. Then to have administration or someone saying, hey, what are you doing? All these people, well, they're coaching your team.
Right.
Like, we need help. Who's going to do all of this?
We need help. And then, even when you get to some of the larger teams, they all really kind of do the same thing.
Yeah.
we have different positions, we have different demands, and then, they get mad if they come out and watch a workout that seems too hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have to make it generic. If I don't have the help, I have to make this workout as generic and cookie cutter as possible so I can see everybody and we can coach and everybody gets coached. So it's, it's really hard. And I'm hoping that they pass that legislation that kind of gets rid of that.
Yeah. So
what they wanted was to keep football coaches out of the weight room, which still doesn't make sense to me because now I can be specific and really train these guys for what they want. And now you don't have to worry about me running a workout with the kid that shouldn't be doing something.
Right.
I can actually have a coach that knows what he's supposed to be doing and run that specific workout for that position group that's separate from the wide receivers, the DBs, and my O-line and D-line, because I have someone who can specifically train them for what they need to get ready for.
Exactly. So
it's
you put a better product on the field.
It's doing what we're supposed to do as coaches.
Yeah, you're putting a better product on the field.
Yeah.
And, since that rule went into effect, I think it was like 2012, something like that.
It was kind of early in my career.
Yeah, it was. And so since that rule's come into effect, your football staffs have tripled in size. And so that's not even an issue anymore, but it's still, we have 5 strength coaches. And I've talked to leaders at the CSCS, NSCA and the CSCCA about this very thing. But a lot of people don't want to touch it, because it's kind of written in stone.
Yeah.
So it's something that needs to be changed. But sorry about that digression there. But, but it's clearly obvious. I'm sitting here listening to you, and you got all these moving parts, and I know how you're doing it. But there are others who are going to say, how is he able to do that? And only have 5 coaches.
Yeah.
So in the weight room, let's bounce back to the weight room. Do you program differently by position, or is it similar, or how does it differ by position?
There's some differences by position. I usually stay for the most part bilateral with my bigger guys. We'll do a lot of unilateral work with them, but I want them to be strong, and I want them to know to feel like they have 2 feet in the ground.
Yeah.
And then we do a little more unilateral work, more, we want to move things a little faster with our smaller guys who are going to be running, and we need to, we want them to be strong, obviously, but, I don't know how strong I need to get my 22 mile per hour guy. I mean, you want him to be strong, but I want him to stay a 22 mile per hour guy.
Yeah.
So that's really more the emphasis. So we, I love velocity base. We love using our Tendo units, and I like to keep my bigger guys and that kind of that strength, speed, absolute strength range. And then my smaller guys, they get a little more, they get a lot of speed, strength, speed. We teeter up in that absolute strength a little bit with them. But like I said, I want to keep those guys fast, and I want to keep them twitchy. So we do kind of fluctuate. And then, obviously some of the exercise prescription will be a little bit different. And then like my big boys, I always want them pushing something. I mean, at least 3-4 times out of the
week. There is your emphasis again on those big old linemen. Out of the love for the position.
Yeah. We want them to be able to express all of that power and force horizontally. So I like to get them pushing stuff. So we got a nice little patch of turf and some nice rogue sleds over there. So we get pushing, and that's how that's probably where we get the majority of our unilateral work is when we're pushing sleds. Yeah.
Yeah, those rogue sleds, they're at one. So I can't quite phrase it like he said it, but one of our players, because it gets hot on that turf in Baton Rouge.
I already know.
And I can't say it quite like he said it, but he was like, Coach, when I go outside the door, when I go outside that roll up door and I see those sleds out there, there's something totally. It's kind of like what Glenn Dorsey and Tyson Jackson. So, again, I was watching those games yesterday, and Tyson was a beast.
Yes, he was.
But Tyson used to always say, they got something out there and it ain't no man. That's the line from the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger and them in it. What was the name of it was the alien that would disappear. What's the name of that movie?
Predator?
Yeah, Predator.
Predator movies, yeah.
Yeah, so the line was, they got something out there and it ain't no man.
It ain't no man.
And that's what Tyson used to say. But, man, those sleds get it out of you. But it's something, that they have to do. Football is a game of pushing, and especially for those guys up front. And I was watching those games yesterday and watching how y'all were coming off the ball. And somebody, man, I'm telling you, he gets a lot of credit for 2007. I'm digressing again because I'm with Coach D here. It didn't do me any good to watch all those games. I watched every highlight from the 2006 season. But Jacob Hester gets a lot of pub about his 2007 career, at LSU when we won the national championship and all. But he was a beast in 2006. And
yes, he was.
At running back, we had Justin Vincent, who was the MVP of the 2003 national championship game. There was Allie Broussard. There was Keelan Williams and Jacob Hester.
Yeah.
Those were four beasts at running back. And, and then we didn't have a big tight end. We had Richard Dixon, but not a big tight end. But, man, y'all came off the ball. Yeah. Y'all were ferocious. And then there were times where you had Jacob Hester and Sean Jordan in the backfield at the same time. And, Sean
Jordan, God.
He probably weighed 245 pounds, could hang clean 396 for a triple.
Easy.
And, was a top 10 heavyweight in UFC for a while.
Yeah, he was.
And you got him at fullback, fearless. So anyway, I'm digressing.
Ball. I remember.
Yeah, they don't play football like that a lot.
No,
now,
they don't even use fullbacks anymore.
Yeah. Now, so over the past couple of years, we didn't really use a tight end. If you said we were playing a tight end in the game, he was a 6'5" or 6'6", 215-pound wide receiver. He was just like a big Dwayne Bowe.
Right.
But now Coach Kelly lines up last week 2 weeks ago against Ole Miss. There were 4 tight ends in the game at one time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I kind of like seeing all those guys lined up on the line of scrimmage,
I love seeing that. The more people you can get down in a 3-point stance, the better.
Yeah. There are people who would disagree, but not coming from this group right here. Okay. All right. So now back to the topic of strength and conditioning. In your opinion, all right, and this opinion varies, but it's a hot topic today, especially today. And with all the stuff that we have to track our football players with, in your opinion, are healthy hamstrings due to a certain distance of sprints that you program, the distances that you use, or the type of conditioning that you use, or something that you do in the weight room? Or is it more of a global response to all of the things in your program that keep them healthy? Like, what's the driving force behind a healthy set of hamstrings?
I think it's the global. I think it's exposing them to strengthening them, exposing them to the different position and angles in the weight room. And then the right exposures outside in running and sprinting. It's first exposing them to the intensity, building to expose them, well, technically first and foremost. And then exposing them to the intensities, and then exposing them to the right volume at those intensities at the right time. And then recovery.
Yeah.
If you can do all that, and if you're not recovering, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So
can't out-train.
It's the global approach to all of it. You know, you get a bunch of medium intensity running over and over and over again without recovery. You're gonna have bad hamstrings. You're gonna have a bunch of hamstrings. You don't expose them to enough acceleration. You don't expose them to enough deceleration. If you expose them too early to those the intensity and the amounts of deceleration, you're just gonna have bad hamstrings. So it's hard. I mean, hamstrings right now probably the most researched body part.
Yeah.
And we have more hamstring injuries than ever before.
Right.
You know, and that tells me that it's the global approach. It's not one or two things that are going to solve the problem. It's a global approach. And then for us, it's hard because we get to see the kids 8 hours a week when they're however many hours a week when they're not around us. And recovery is a big thing. We could do everything right, but if they don't sleep and they're not hydrated and they don't eat when they're away from us, that strong hamstring that's been progressed and done everything right, it'll pop on you.
Yeah.
So it's the global. It's definitely to me the global approach.
All right. And so I want to segue into this question because this has a lot to do with the last topic. What are some things that you have noticed in your career that high school players are missing when they enroll at Cal or Arizona or A&M or FSU or LSU? What are some things that they're lacking in when compared to the team that you're working with now?
Physically, they're lacking lower body strength, especially in that posterior chain. And everybody's shoulders are bad, man. Yeah. Everybody. Because all they do, I mean, think about it. I think the first thing I ever did in the weight room was bench press.
Yeah.
And it was my favorite thing to do. Everybody is bench.
I've seen you throw some heavy weight around. Not only did you do it a lot, you were good at it. And so people like doing what they're good at.
They like doing what they're good at. And then you just end up with bad shoulders because you don't work on the back. You don't pull. Right. You know, so, you know, I think, and then the other part too is that these, you know, a lot of kids, they just playing one sport and it's just all they do. They don't, you know, it's just stacking all this work on their body so that they're coming in, and you just gotta reset. You gotta take them all the way back to square one and just once again teach them how to move.
Right.
They don't know how to move. They don't know how to hinge. Their squatting pattern is terrible. You know, they're just used to just kind of going in and just doing whatever and doing a lot of it. So it's just a bunch of volume on top of dysfunction.
Yeah.
With a lot of young guys.
Knowledge bomb right there. So I got this little thing over here. Look, it goes, wait, I don't have it turned up. Let me turn this little thing up. All right. You heard that? All right. I'm going to get a bomb. So when somebody drops a knowledge bomb like you just dropped, I'm going to go. But I haven't got the bomb yet.
You got to find the bomb sound effect.
Yeah. You hit the nail right on the head right there. And it's amazing. And that's so, for a guilty plug here, that's why we're doing the Moffitt Method program.
Yeah.
Because they're, you know, at most schools, and I don't know what it was like at Godby. Now, my first job in 1988, I was a GA. My first job, I GA'd. But my first real paying job was at John Curtis Christian School in New Orleans. So that school had a full-time strength coach, you know, and I didn't teach a class. I was in the weight room 6 periods a day. I had a planning period, but I was in there 6 periods a day, and every athlete in the school trained with us. So, but a lot of schools, it's not like that, man. And you have the youngest guy on the totem pole, or the guy that used to be a coach. It's not the coach anymore. And no offense to those people. They're doing the best job that they can.
Yeah.
But it's different. There's so much more that's available today for high school kids, and there's so much that you can do. And look, they might not go on to play football at LSU or Tennessee Tech where I played, but you're still going to be more competitive and against the opponents that you play against in your district if you have a progressive, well-designed off-season, in-season training program. And
No doubt.
so versus a coach opening the gym and say, all right, y'all go in there today. We got bench 3 sets of 10, and then we're going to squat 3 sets of 10. In fact, our very first client wasn't a football team. It was it's a Division III collegiate basketball program. And the coach called me and says, look, we don't have a strength coach. We have a gym. And I'm the strength coach, and I don't know anything about it. And everything that we do the same thing every day, and it's 3 sets of 10. Can you help me? I said, I think we can help.
No doubt. We got to help you.
Yeah, got to help you. So you have some great assistant coaches.
Oh, yeah.
And I know as a staff, you all do a very good job in tracking and analysis of all your running, your lifting, your practicing, your games, I'm sure. Yeah. Are there some things that you can share with us about what you're tracking without going into too great a detail? And how do you use those things to your advantage? And you've touched on a lot of this, but
well, first and foremost, we're tracking. I don't know if we're tracking anything that anybody else isn't tracking.
Right.
But it's like you always say, man, it's not always what you do, it's how you do it. Mm-hmm. And that's where the people that work for me is how we're doing it. We're using this information, we're meeting about it, we're talking about it, we're picking apart even what we're doing to see what we can do better.
Like self-scout.
We're self-scouting all the time. And we don't sit in those meetings and talk about how great that off season was or how great that phase was. We're finding, what didn't work? On this week, we wanted this week, we wanted guys to peak in their jumps on the force plate. We want them to hit their top mile per hour. Who didn't do it? And let's go back and let's look at why they didn't do it. Let's look at their numbers leading up. What didn't we do right with this person? What did we miss in the weight room? Did we put this person in the wrong bucket as far as what they needed? Did they need more power work? Did they need more strength work? What did we miss? Where did we miss the boat? And that's really what we're doing with all of our data. We're trying to figure out what we're missing. We're not collecting it to pat ourselves on the back. We're collecting it to improve. And then also to help communicate with our coaches what our guys need and when they need it. So I think that's the biggest thing for us is we're trying to do it the right way. We're trying to use this data to make us better so we can make our athletes better.
Now, you've mentioned the force plate a couple of times.
Yeah.
Are you using Hawkins Dynamics or Sparta?
We got
Vault.
We use Vault. I've heard great things about Hawkins, and I know our basketball team uses them, but I like the big plate. Vault has that real big plate, so I like the bigger plates. Yeah.
Now you mentioned counter movement jump, of course, and then you said 5-10.
10-5. Yeah.
10-5.
Yeah. So it's 10, like those 10 reactive pogos. Okay. We do everything hands on hips so that we're not getting max effort on these jumps. And then it takes, out of those 10 jumps, it takes the best 5, and then it averages and it gives you that reactive strength index. So the counter movement just gives you the RSI mod, but the 10-5 actually gives you the true reactive strength index.
Have y'all experimented with the mid-thigh isometric pull or?
Now we have with some of our reconditioning guys. We haven't with the whole team. And Vaught actually made us this cool contraption.
Yeah, they copied ours.
Oh, did they?
FYI. Yeah. So, yeah. So we wanted to, can I tell a story here real quick?
Yeah, man.
It kind of makes me mad. So we did, so we wanted to do the mid-thigh pull. And so I looked, and Vald sold a rack that was like $4,000, and there was no way I was going to do that. And because we had the Mondo Armor flooring, and it's a little softer than the Mondo Sport Impact, etc. So we took a big aluminum plate, and you know how the plates kind of shift a little bit after you jump. So what we did is we took this big 1/4-inch piece of aluminum that was big. We covered it with the purple rubber, Mondo rubber.
Okay.
Then we cut out holes in it for the feet of the force plate to fit in, so the force plate wouldn't move. While we jumped on it. So we had this big piece of aluminum that the force plate sat on. And then we wanted to do the mid-thigh pulls. So I was just staring at the plates one day, and I said, what if we cut a hole in the rubber between the two plates, and we get them to weld us a little bitty little flange where we can take a carabiner and hook onto that, put a chain, and take a weight bar. And Vic was like, that's genius, boss. And so we cut a hole in the rubber, and then we had a guy at the physical plant weld us a flange so that we could put a carabiner on it. We had an old bent barbell. We just cut out a section of it, and he welded a hook on it where we could hook the bar, and then we did it. So then I took pictures of all of it, and I sent it to Roderick Moore and was giving Roderick a hard time about, y'all are selling this $4,000 rack, and we made our own. Next thing you know, Vald comes out with, they knocked it off. They didn't even say thank you, but that's okay. That happens. So anyway, that's my funny story about the Vald mid-thigh pull. What about the 5-rep squat assessment? Have y'all ever done that?
No, we haven't done that one yet.
Yeah. So what we started doing at the beginning of the semester, of each semester or training phase, is we set up what we called the force plate combine. So we set up all of our force plates and a Sparta plate also. We borrowed a Sparta plate. So when you walked in the door, you do your warm up, and the first jump that you did was the counter movement jump, hands on the hip, counter movement jump. And then you either did a depth jump, stepping off the box, or you did a squat jump from an isometric hold based on what position you played.
Gotcha.
Then you did the mid-thigh pull, and then after that, you went and did the 5-rep squat assessment. And then in addition to that, there was the Sparta Science force plate also. So we would do all those jumps and knock all those jumps out in one session, and after warming up, it didn't take no time at all to knock it out. And, so that's what we called our force plate combine. Okay. And the players knew that we were doing it and got a handful of data. You know how it is. You get more information than what you can comb through.
No doubt.
But it was always, my philosophy was always to test everything, whether or not you were going to use it today or tomorrow. You always had it in the box in case you needed it.
Yeah.
So we tested everything.
I'm still that.
Now, do you look at, and I'm sure you do, because it's Coach Higginbotham. That's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
Right? Zach's a brilliant. It helps to have a guy like that, and
no doubt,
and a workhorse too.
For sure. Yeah. He's always working. He takes it home. He doesn't stop working.
Yeah. Right. Do y'all look at because you were talking about your bands, and your acceleration, deceleration bands, but do y'all individualize your velocity bands for the player or by the position?
We do it by the player.
Yeah.
So everybody, every velocity band is based off the individual and what their max velocity is.
Okay. Do you get that through a fly 20 or through practice and games? How do you go about getting that max velocity?
Yeah, in training we get it through a flying 20.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And then anytime they hit a new max velocity in practice or a game,
You change.
we just change it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of people just go with what is set on the software, versus, and then we did the same for us. We were real big into heart rate too. So we actually set people's max heart rate also. So you can look at the internal load and the external load. But my question about the velocities, do you look, and I'm sure I'm asking a rhetorical question here, I think, but do y'all look at the distances from 90 to 95% of their maximum velocity? Do you look at those distances throughout the season? And then do you program during the off season on those velocities? Is that where you get your the distances to train for your max velocity?
Yes. We look at once like that big week, what we call worst case scenario. We probably need to come up with a different name for it. But yeah, we look at what bands are he getting distances? How much distance is this guy getting from 80 to 85, from 85 to 90, 90 to 95, and 95 plus.
Right.
And then that's what we're using to make sure that they're covering those distances and getting those exposures. And then even in practice, we have our iPads out, and like yesterday we have Top Speed Tuesdays, where we want you to hit a certain velocity and we want you to accumulate a certain amount of yardage over 70%.
Yeah.
Excuse me, so over 70% of your max velocity, to make sure that you're ready, that you're getting what you want, you're going to get in the game. And if they don't get it, I'm calling names after practice, and they head over to Zach, and it's either he has a prescription if they have to hit a velocity, or they just need to accumulate a certain amount of what we call high speed yardage.
Yeah.
To make sure that we continue. And we also have thresholds hit. So we have a 28-day rolling average. So we stay within a certain range, so they don't fall under or we don't go too far over. You start getting to 15, 20% over, we're putting you at risk for an injury.
Yeah, and that's similar like acute to chronic. That's like acute to chronic ratio.
Yeah. So we're looking at it live, and then I'll have a color pop up. Yeah. It'll, a green, a red, or a yellow will pop up on that metric to tell me where you are within that player's actual threshold, their rolling average, to make sure that we're staying within that certain range and we're not pushing them too far.
Awesome. And I know that there's people doing that. I just wanted to, that's why I said, I know y'all are killing it. So, but here's the reason why I asked it. So, I had a former player of ours that called me this week, and, he's playing in the NFL, and he says, Coach, I'm having hamstring problems, and I want you to send me a workout for my hamstrings. And I said, so, tell me what's going on and all this. And so then I asked him, I said, so in practice during the week, what do you do during the week in practice? And he goes, well, Coach, they really don't let me practice that much because they're afraid of me hurting my hamstring. And I said, what about running? And he was like, no, Coach, I'm not doing much. I ride the bike and stuff like that. So, he's not hitting those numbers in practice, and the hamstring's never going to get any better. Like, I can send you, that's the reason for some of these questions that I've asked you, because you can sit and do all the different leg curls and hamstring from every angle. But if you're not going out and hitting those thresholds in practice, then you're going to get hurt every time you play in a game. No doubt.
And I think that was my light bulb moment when it came to just even looking at GPS, because remember when that first came out, especially sport coaches, they were scared that we were going to be telling them it's too much, it's too much, it's too much. Well, honestly, Coach, I end up doing more, telling coaches more, it's not enough.
Yeah, I know.
Than I do saying that it's too much. But you get you can get both ends of the spectrum. I remember you and I having a conversation when I was coaching for you, and you saying that, man, I told coach that every time we hit this player low, we lose.
Yeah.
I remember I think that was the first time I was like, huh?
Yeah. Every time we hit a weekly total over a certain number, we lost every time. Every time. It was 100%. That's simple.
Yeah. And what I'm learning now is the same thing happens when you don't hit it.
Ooh. All right. Knowledge bomb. Damn, I got to get my knowledge bomb.
There's no difference between the undertrain and the overtrain.
It looks the same.
Too same.
Looks just like not enough.
Yep. And that's what it is. So I usually like to tell coaches that first before I tell them to pull back, because if I go and I'm telling them, man, hey, we got to do a little bit more, they're like, oh, really?
What? Yeah.
And then when I go and I tell them to pull back, they're like, okay, let's pull back. Yeah. There's no question, there's no hesitation. You just got to be strategic in how to communicate with these coaches. But I'm usually like, man, we got to do more. We got to pick it up.
Yeah. See, Coach Miles liked the poker chip analysis.
Yeah.
He was a big Texas Hold'em guy. So I would say, Coach, we're running low on poker chips, or Coach, you're stacked with chips, man. We need to bet. We need to bet. We need to go in.
Yeah.
When it comes and, so we're getting down to the end of this thing. You've been unbelievable, but I still got a couple of important questions for you that I want to ask. One is developing your weight room culture and the ownership that is required for a high level competition and developing elite athletes. How do you go about developing that?
First, expectations. What are the expectations? What do you expect to do every time you come in here? We're not budging on, having a standard for how we're going to do those things. This is how we operate. We cannot budge from that. And it can't just be the coaches enforcing the standard and the expectations. It has to be player
driven. Yeah.
Yeah. And then consistency, man. You can't let anything slide, even if it's not that bad, if it's just even close to being away from what you want it to be, you got to hit it. You got to nip it in the bud before it gets too bad. And that's,
go ahead. I got a story to tell, but go ahead.
Yeah. And that's, those three things that's it, man. That's what it is. And it's just every day. We don't have rule. We have standards. Yeah. That's just what it is.
When Coach Saban was here, he didn't allow earrings. And, I would walk in a room and there'd be 5 football coaches in the room, and there's guys with earrings on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd go around the room and take earrings out. And I was consistent, we're going to take our earrings out.
No doubt.
I can remember we're getting ready in 2003 to play the national championship game, and Sean Jordan had flip-flops on, and Michael Clayton had earrings on, and we're in the meeting before you get on the bus to go to the stadium. So I went over, I said, Sean, you got to have shoes on. You can't wear flip-flops out of here. What happens if you, stub your toe, cut your foot? And Michael had earrings in, and I said, Michael, and they weren't cubic zirconias either. They were real nice. And they look good. Right. But it wasn't my rule. It was the coach's rule. I said, Michael, you got to take your earrings out. And he goes, why, Coach? I said, because Coach Saban, it's a team rule. And, we're fixing to go play the biggest game of my coaching career and your playing career. And we're not going to start it off by doing something that is against the head coach's word. He was like, man, but he took them out, and handed them to me and said, Coach, don't lose these. They're real. But I kept on, and I didn't back down. And sooner or later, I'd walk into the big team meeting room, and then all you guys would go, psh, And everybody would start taking
it.
Here he comes.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't. And I was telling a coach that this morning. A college coach called me, and we were talking, and we were talking about expectations and standards and why they were underperforming. And it was because of the little things that if you say your shoes have got to be tied, then everyone has to support that. Whether, and you know, one thing that I've always been big in is there being one voice in the building, and
For sure.
you know, and it's if they're in the equipment room or in the training room, if the head coach says this is how we're going to do something, then it's everyone in the building's responsibility to carry that message through to the team. And it's one of the simplest things, whether it's your staff or my staff or the football staff. It's everybody's responsibility to do it. And that's how you develop that real culture, man, that,
For sure.
that stands the test of time.
Yep. Everybody got to be on the same page.
Now, do you share your facility at Cal with the other sports?
Yeah, this is, the only sports that don't use this are like basketball, volleyball, and swimming. Everybody else uses this. Yeah.
And so everybody gets along well, and y'all share the facility.
Oh, yeah. Coach Blasquez was over the performance department. Yeah, he doesn't play. I mean, he's got it down to a T to how this thing is.
How long has he been there? How long has he been there?
20 years.
Yeah, see it.
So he was like Marshawn Lynch and all those guys, Deshaun Jackson, Keenan Allen. He was their strength coach.
Yeah.
So he's a football guy. He's in. He coached at De La Salle.
He
went 138-0.
Yeah, was he Trevelle's? So he was there when Trevelle Gaines was there, probably.
He knows Trevelle Gaines. Yeah, he knows Trevelle. Yeah.
You ever see Trevelle? Is he out in Cali? Where is he?
You know, I think he's in Vegas.
Yeah, probably Vegas, New York, somewhere like that.
I think he's in Vegas. But he knows Trevelle. Yeah. So he knows. So football gets priority, but he has it locked in. Yep.
Good. And I bet y'all share all of your technology with them, all the force plates, the NOR board.
Yep, all of it. Yep.
Hey, let me ask you this. What's your, have you ever done the NOR board? Just the full eccentric Nordic exercise? What's your score?
Yep, we have.
Torque? What's your peak torque? I just want to see if I can compete. Do you remember?
What, mine?
Yeah.
The most I had was a 650.
Oh no, I can't. Mass kicks ass. I can't handle it. We used to, when we got the NOR board, we had top 10 strength coach, peak torque and everything. We had.
Oh really?
Yeah, for the strength staff. Oh yeah, I think I was like third. Not bad for a 59-year-old man. I mean, I can compete. Any books that you would recommend or podcast, anything that, is your go-to?
Yeah, well, shoot, right now I just started Fergus Connolly's The Process.
Mm-hmm.
I just started that. I got level 1, but it's like 3 different levels. So I got all 3 of those. So I'm kind of getting started on that one. And then, I don't know, this might be a little advanced. I'm kind of I started this one and I slowed down a little bit. It's The Governing Dynamics of the NFL, The Direct Path to the Lombardi Trophy by James Smith.
Oh, wow.
I'm just going through it. I'm like, man, I need to do this in the off season. I can't, because I got to read 5 pages and I got to go back and read them over because it's a complex read, but.
I haven't even seen that. Is it new?
It's new. I think I bought it maybe a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And Marco Uyama, who was my boss at the 49ers, sent me the link to it and was like, get this. Yeah. So once the season's over, I'll lock in on that. But I get too many knocks on my door to read that one.
Yeah.
Right now. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, our time is up, Big B.
All right, man. This was good, man. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, hey man, you didn't enjoy it half as much as I did. I promise you that, man. So I appreciate it, and it's been great talking to you, not only about your career, but how you train the team at Cal. And it bring a tear to this old glass eye I got over here. Just hearing you talk, man, it's unbelievable. And so hats off to you and your staff there at Cal. And I wish y'all nothing but luck. And please say hello to your whole family.
Will do.
And Angela, Deacon, Chandler, and make sure everybody knows that the Moffitts are thinking about them, and happy Thanksgiving and all that.
Yeah, no doubt. Will do. Right, you do the same too.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. And they're all doing good here.
Good.
Yeah, the Moffitts are holding down the fort. You can follow Coach Johnson on Twitter and Instagram at _Coach B1. And so it's _COACHBEE and then the number 1. So make sure that you give him a follow. And Big B, Coach B, stay in touch. I know,
we'll do. We will.
Yeah, we're family.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
it, brother. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you, Coach. Talk to you later.
Here we are at the Ask Coach Moffitt Anything section of the podcast. The Ask Coach questions gives the listeners an opportunity to ask me questions regarding this podcast, which was unbelievable, and the Moffitt Method program, or anything strength and conditioning related, hunting, cooking, professional bike racing, anything. So don't hold back. And you can email those questions. If you don't want to instant message us or direct message us, whatever, on our social media accounts, you can email me at at podcast@themoffittmethod.fit. Again, podcast@themoffittmethod.fit. So today's Ask Moffitt Anything question comes from Ann. And she wrote, "Hello, Coach Moffitt. My son sprained his ankle badly and is missing practice with his team. Are there things that he can do to stay in shape until he is allowed by the doctor to return to play?" And so I'd like to start by saying there's a lot of different types of and degrees of an ankle sprain. So without knowing any of the specifics, I'll have to keep my answer more generalized, which I should do anyway. It's really, first off, in a nutshell, in the quick version, is to make sure that regardless of any injury, ankle, knee, hip, back, shoulder, elbow, hand, anything, it's important that you make sure and you see a reputable orthopedic doctor. That's first and foremost, that you get it properly evaluated and diagnosed by an orthopedic doctor. I would say that to anyone. And, don't always take your uncles or your cousins or your husband's advice on this because, in my time here, there's, I've seen just about every injury that there could be, and there's subtle differences in injuries and diagnosing certain injuries that could either make for a shorter or longer recovery process, and that's important. In many cases, the doctor will recommend rehab or certified athletic trainer or physical therapist to start, those type of modalities that are required for, the right rehab and recovery that your son needs. And I'm sure if he's high school age, most high schools today have a certified athletic trainer there. If this isn't something that's available, I'd recommend that you ask the doctor or the school's athletic trainer or a physical therapist for a list of therapy and exercises that need to be performed, and those that can be performed at home in addition to what they're doing at school or in rehab. Because, a lot of places you go into, they're going to give you, for the lack of a better term, cookie cutter protocols especially in high school programs where, there might only be one athletic trainer for the entire athletic department. So they're going to give you a cookie cutter protocol that the young man or young lady is supposed to do while they're over there helping everyone else or at practice or whatever. So there's always something, if that's the case, that young man or young lady could do at home on their own. So make sure that you ask for a list of things so that they can do it. And in this case, it isn't a bad idea, again, for them to do extra at night while they're at home, or make sure that you oversee it if they're not doing it at school, or if they're not going to a rehab facility, that you make sure that your son is doing what he's supposed to do. Because athletic injuries and sprained ankles and things of that nature, they're not like a cold. They just don't go away. There's always going to be, an injury component that lasts for an extended period of time, because we're talking about tissues that are, there's different levels of, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, et cetera. And so there are some aspects of a sprained ankle that could last weeks, if not months, if not properly rehabbed. So you got to make sure that your son or daughter is doing something, because again, it's just not going to go away. While this is taking place, the rest of the body needs to continue to do whatever is possible without aggravating the injured ankle. So I'm a big proponent of return to play protocol, is what it's called. And we based this type of extra lifting and running on the severity of the injury and how well that individual could get around the weight room. So if it's an ankle injury, we would begin training on a UBE, or upper body ergometer, or, for the lack of a better term, an upper body bicycle. So we're working the cardiovascular system, not optimally, but we're still doing something to maintain a level of aerobic conditioning while that person is recovering from that ankle injury. When they can start going weight bearing, we would put them on a stationary bike and have them pedal a stationary bike, and then supplement that with their rehab. Once they were cleared from doing that, then we would start, if they were able to, on a stair climber or elliptical, or walking on a treadmill. There's the zero gravity treadmills and stuff. So, you want to go non-weight bearing first, and then weight bearing, and then gradually progress that activity until they're doing, if it's in season, you would want to start with at some point, some very low intensity sports or position specific movement. So if your son plays offensive line, then you would want your son walking through his blocks or running through plays, or walking through plays, I should say, and then gradually increase the intensity of that work to where your son, or your daughter for that matter, is able to perform his or her sports skills without pain. And then you gradually increase the intensity of that, and then they return to play. And then while they're doing that, they're also in the weight room. So we would start, if we had a player that had a sprained ankle, instead of squatting, we would immediately start with either TRX or single leg squats. So they're holding on to the TRX bands for balance, or regular body weight pistol squats. So we're going to strengthen the non-involved leg, just as if we were strengthening, a healthy subject. So you start with lower body strengthening exercises like pistol squats, single leg dumbbell RDLs, etc., until they can go weight bearing. And then once they're able to go weight bearing, you would start a regular squat progression with kettlebell or dumbbell goblet squats, and then gradually increase the load on that athlete until they were doing a bilateral squat. And while that's going on, you would do some body weight single leg squats with the involved leg, gradually increasing the intensity of that. And then for the most part, as long as they can get around the weight room, if he's not on crutches, then he can do his upper body strengthening exercises. But you start very specific, making sure that you're not doing too much, based on the doctor and the physical therapist and the certified athletic trainer's recommendations. So, that was a big one, but it's important, and it's something that we took very seriously, not just at LSU. I can remember writing return to play protocols when I was at the University of Tennessee 28 years ago in my career. That was a big topic back then, is making sure that when a player was out and not practicing or competing with the team, that he was doing the things that he or her needed to do while they were recovering from that injury. Okay. So thank you, Ann, for the question. It was a great question. And again, something that I feel very strongly about. So this brings us to the end of today's podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. I know you're going to love this episode. Coach Brian Johnson. I met Brian when he was on his official visit in 2005 or 2006. So it's neat to see someone that you met when they were in high school continue or in a career that you hold so dear to your heart. And he's an impressive young coach. And he's not young now, but an impressive coach, and has done an outstanding job at every stop. If you are someone interested in doing a podcast with us, or if is someone that you would enjoy hearing and being a guest on our podcast, please email us again at podcast@themoffittmethod.fit. podcast@themoffittmethod.fit. And I hope that you enjoyed again this as much as I did. If so, please subscribe and leave us a review. For more information about the Moffitt Method program and everything that we have to offer, please visit us on Instagram at the Moffitt Method, or Twitter at Moffitt Method, or our website, themoffittmethod.fit, themoffittmethod.fit. Thank you for joining us today. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you, and have a great day.